Hello, this is Mr. Molo for lesson 3.5, Pythagorean theorem. We use the Pythagorean theorem when we're finding our measures of our triangles. And this only works for right triangles. And our formula for this is going to be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And we'll see that a triangle is made up of two legs and something called the hypotenuse. Okay, the hypotenuse is always the longest side, and it's always the side diagonally across from the 90-degree angle. It's important we know which one the hypotenuse is, because otherwise we don't know if we're finding A, or if we're finding B, or if we're finding C. The legs can be A or B, it doesn't matter. This leg could be A or B, this leg could be A or B, but the hypotenuse is always the C. So if we were looking at this triangle right here, across from the 90-degree angle would be the hypotenuse. So there's my hypotenuse, and then A and P are both legs. This one right here, across from the 90-degree angle, is my hypotenuse, which would be x, and then z and y are my legs. Same thing here, across from the 90-degree angle is k, that means that's my hypotenuse, so then my legs are j and l. So again, we're using the formula a squared plus b squared equals c squared when we're finding c. Otherwise, if it's not finding c, then we're going to be using c squared minus, and it doesn't matter if you put a squared or b squared, I'll just put a squared, equals b squared, because we're finding that missing leg, and we'll do a problem of each. So if we're trying to find here, we're trying to find the hypotenuse, we're trying to find that c. So I'm going to be using my a squared plus b squared formula. So if I have 4 squared, which is really 16, plus 5 squared, which is really 25, I know that equals c squared, which would be 41. I don't know what the square root of 41 is, so I don't know what c would be. So I'm just going to say it equals the square root of 41. Here I have, again, I'm finding the hypotenuse. So I have 7 squared, which is 49. I have 24 squared, which is 576. There's my squared, and I need to figure out what c squared is. Well, I know c squared is going to equal these two together, and I know those two together gives me 625. So going back to what we did yesterday, I need to figure out what number squared, so what number times itself, equals 625. That means I need to take my square root of 625, which ends up being 25. So I know 25 is going to be my z. One way to see if I did this right, or just right off the bat to see if you're doing it right, the hypotenuse is always your biggest side. So if you got like a number like 23 here, well, it doesn't really make sense because the z has to be your biggest side. So 25 is bigger than 7, 25 is bigger than 24, so we know it could be right. Here's a good way that we would use it in real life. So if I'm driving across North Dakota, well, I can go all the way down North Dakota, which is 210 miles, or I can go all the way across, and then all the way across North Dakota, which would be 340 miles, or I can cut across. And let's just say I want to cut across, but let's just see how much time I'm really saving by cutting across. So if I cut across, so if I'm going down, there's my a squared, so I have 210 squared, and 210 squared is 44,100. And then going across the bottom to get to the other side, so 340 squared, and 340 squared is going to be 115,600. So I add those two up, and I am going to get 159,700. Remember, this is going to be my c squared, so I need to figure out what number squared gives me 159,700, and it ends up being about 400. I'll do my squiggly equal sign. It ends up being about 400. So that means I know if I drive straight across it's only going to be about 400 miles. Well, that ends up saving me a lot of time because 210 miles plus 340 miles is 550 miles. So it's saving me 150 miles, which would be about 2.5 hours. So this is a good real life example of how I could see how far I'm really going to go. Alright, and we will do one of that I already have the hypotenuse. So now I see that I know that it's 43 feet from the top of the tree down to the shadow, and I know the shadow is casting at 12 feet. Well, I want to know how tall that bird is up there. Okay, so this would be an example where I'm going to do c squared minus a squared equals b squared. Because I already know my c. I already know my c is 43 feet. Okay, so I need to do 43 squared. 43 squared is 1,849 minus 12 squared, which is 144. I subtract those two, and I get 1,705 is b squared. Well, again, now I need to figure out what that is as a number. So square root of 1,705 gives me about 41. So again, I'll do my squiggly equal sign. That means that tree is about 41 feet tall. Again, it makes sense. My hypotenuse is my biggest side. So 43 is bigger than 41, and 43 is also bigger than 12. So I know that it could still be the correct answer.